expensive. We're staying at room 13. Usually airy and usually buried, and that's just how my life goes. And I don't ever try to dress to impress. Fuck you, preppy assholes. On the 14th floor where the bathroom door don't lie. So happy we don't gotta worry about the cops. We could all get arrested for this, but when the police mix, I don't give a shit tonight. Alright. She walks in the bedroom fast, despite all the noise from the crowd. Now she spent the sound of bathroom sink. Her mother would be so proud. Gets on the deed and there's a line to go pee, but the bathroom looks like a war zone.
Welcome in to episode 160 of Phired Up. Check us out at firedupsports.com. I'm Mike Giletto. Joining me as always, Dom Console. Dom, what's going on, brother?
Yo, what's up? I thought you forgot about us for a sec. You took 5 seconons to say something.
Yeah, well, yeah, it happens. It's
Need your attention.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was distracted. I was looking down at something. But we're all good now. And so Chris isn't here with us this week. He's enjoying his time down at Disney. Hopefully he's having fun down there. But in his spot tonight, Mark Ramos. You can check him out. What a Cool Talk podcast on Twitter or X, whatever the kids call it nowadays. The Ramos Roundup, pretty much every Monday. I think you've been kind of pumping those out on firedupsports.com. What's going on, man?
Nothing much, man. Same old, except for everything that's happened here with the Flyers and Sixers. This has been
very busy weekend.
Busy weekend for sure. So I've had my face in my phone all weekend for that. So
yes.
I think since our last show, we've had a Bryce Harper and Schwarber injury. We've had a Sixers draft. We've had a Flyers draft. We've had free agency for both, right? For MLB or NHL and NBA. So we got a lot going on.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, a lot going on, and we kind of started with the Sixers. I mean, well, listen, we'll get to Matvey Michkov later. We all want to talk about him. It's the biggest story other than the Sixers free agency in the city right now. But yeah, I mean the Sixers making some pretty big news. Moves. I guess the question is how far or how does it put them over the top, whatever. And that those are questions that aren't going to be answered, for a long time, probably until next March, April, May. But Mark, what do you think so far about the moves they've made?
It's like you're bringing guys back like Kelly, and like I was on board with that anyway. Like them bringing back Oubre and guys like that. But I mean, as far as like they were attached to every big name that was available or allegedly available. Them settling on George as their guy, I think, is like. I mean, they're probably on the Embiid timeline anyway. What's that? That may be 2 or 3 years here, like that they even have a shot at a title. And PG kind of fits that, at this point of his career, 34 years old. But I mean, everything I've read about him here, I mean, last year, I believe it was his 14th year in the league.
Yep.
This was his most efficient shooting year of his career in year 14.
Okay.
Last season. So I don't know if you're hedging your bets, hoping that he can do that again in year 15 and 16. But I mean, at least gets them in the conversation, I think, right? Like with PG, Maxey, and Joel, that gets you in the conversation in the East. And it didn't feel like that last year.
No, I think the biggest thing is, yes, we won a finals. We want to win the finals. But like this team hasn't even gotten to the Eastern Conference Finals. And I think if you replace, and obviously they're going to have a little bit of a different team than they did last year, not even talking about Tobias, but like, let's say basically what they did was they subtracted Tobias and they've added Paul George in his place, right? Like, I think if you did that last year, I was on the record of saying like if Tobias played like normal Tobias, they would have won in 5 against the Knicks, and then they would have probably beaten Indiana, and they get to the Eastern Conference Finals. They may not have beaten Boston, but I think if you replace George with that, I think you have a chance to go up against Boston, because I think if you replace George with Tobias, you win the Knicks series, you win the Indy series, and then we're talking about a series contending, really contending to get to the finals. Yeah, I think the Paul George thing is interesting too, because like, what else were you gonna do? Because they clearly don't want to give up too many assets, I don't think. And the best thing they could do is the best home run swing they have is to offer Paul George money, right? Like there was nobody else really worth giving that money, and they didn't have to give up assets for him. So while I wasn't thrilled 48 hours ago, I'm way more into it now.
Coming around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he's good defensively too. Like I didn't realize how good he didn't play his best year defensively last year, but he had 1.5, almost 2 steals a game. Like
1.5
he's had
steals
over
a game.
2. He had over 2 steals in his career for multiple years, I believe. But you know what? That's way better than Tobias. Tobias averages under 1, I think. So like, you add the defensive side to it. You add an extra. I think Tobias averages like 16 for his career. What does Paul? Do you have Paul George's numbers up?
I do, from last season.
No, just for his career. Like, what does he average for his career? 23.
Career. I don't have career. I just have percent.
It's around that, I think.
It's around 23.
22
Yeah.
or 23. Yeah.
Last season it was 22.6.
Okay. He's only been over 20. I think he's only been over 27 one time in his career, and it was what time that was. The last time he played with a speedy guard.
That was his last year of
Paul.
Oklahoma City.
Yeah,
28
so
points.
are you on Basketball Reference?
This is Spot Tracker.
Okay, I was gonna say because Basketball Reference has it all at the bottom, like their career numbers.
That's not them on.
But yeah, the last time he had a career year, it was with a small speedy guard in Chris Paul in Oklahoma City, averaged 28. So, hopefully he can replicate that. That would be a lot of fun. I'm not expecting him to average 28 though. So
yeah. No, I mean, I think you're right, Dom. Like, I think this is his best. Like, this is their best shot at it. And he was probably the best option. My whole thing, I think, and I had said this to Don on a lot of our Drunk on the Court shows, that like I thought a lot of this was him angling to get more money out of the Clippers. I wasn't really sure that he was ever really going to leave. So the fact that like he has, and now he's here, I think is like really kind of surprising. It surprised me, even though I know that they had been connected to him for a while. And all those things you mentioned about the defense, the off the ball stuff, he can do all that, and he'll be a much improved version over Harris. So I'm interested to see now. I think with whatever little, I don't know exactly how much cap space they have left. But I think I would like for them to go get somebody who can kind of move the basketball a little bit, because
I agree.
I don't know that, they have a lot of great passers. They certainly have guys that can finish, I think, but, to add a couple guys that can move the basketball a little bit, I think that'll go a long way.
I completely agree. I think you have guys like Kelly Oubre, Paul George, and a couple other guys that really are not great at facilitating or passing the ball around. Yeah. So I completely agree.
20.8 he averages in his career, to answer your question.
Okay, that's a little light compared to what I thought it was, but it's 4 more than Tobias. So and that's a lot in basketball.
Right, but and speaking to Mark talking about like efficiency, he did have his most efficient season, like 47 field goal percentage. His 3-point percentage was 40, almost 42%. So
how many attempts? Field goal 3-point attempts?
3-point attempts, 7.9 per game.
Wow. Okay. I was gonna say if he's around like 5, I'd be like pretty happy at 40. What did you say? 42%?
41.5%. Something like that. Yeah, right around there.
Wow, that's actually like really. You're taking 7 shots a game. Or 7 threes a game. You're hitting 42%. It's pretty good.
Yep.
Yeah.
I also think it's look, comparing it to like the Phillies, right? Like the Phillies have Bryce Harper and Trey Turner and all these guys, a couple of these guys that have these long contracts that at the end, as long as they bring some kind of championship or even close to it, I don't even care about the last 2 years of Paul George, kind of comparing it to the Phillies, but like, yeah, I just think they needed to take a home run swing, like you said. You only have 2-3 years left of Embiid probably at this level, or maybe at all. So I mean, there were a couple guys that I probably would have preferred over Paul George, but again, it's giving up assets. It's Brandon Ingram that you'd have to trade, 2 first-round picks for. I know Larry Markkinen is like technically, they're trying to shop him right now, but I don't know that he puts you over the top if he's your third guy. They could still potentially trade for him, but I don't think that happens because next year you're going to have to pay him and you're going to give up assets to basically lose him next year. So,
right.
I would like them. I do like. I don't know that he fits what you said, like, kind of passing the ball, facilitating it all. But Gary Trent Jr. really, that's like a highlight for me. That's somebody I'm keeping my eye on. Maybe the Sixers could work out something with him.
I had thought about I don't know if he fits this either, but I know that he's had his game has kind of evolved over the last couple of years, and I don't think he signed anywhere yet. But Malik Monk was another one that I had kind of thought about as an option for them. Yeah, I think like really, I mean, as you said, like you mentioned the point about the Phillies and the contracts, like that's kind of where the Sixers are with this. Like you take the swing now. I think that was a big sticking point for a lot of teams. From everything that I was able to read and see about the Paul George deal, was a lot of teams. I think the Clippers were very reluctant to go 4 years, and the Sixers may have been the only team that offered him the 4th year. And they're probably thinking anyway, like if he's dynamite for 2 of these years and we get to a title, that's probably worth it.
Yeah. For sure.
And, I don't disagree with that line of thinking because, I mean, they're already kind of laboring through the Embiid stuff. Like, we're already kind of worried about whether or not he can stay on the floor or not. And, I guess what's another guy for that?
Yeah, add him to the list.
Yeah, I mean, another talented guy that has had, health concerns and things like that. I mean, PG's had I think he's had tibulas and fibulas and hamstrings and things like that. And they don't tend to age well. They don't just get better, I think, as you get older.
I also listen, they had to have told him, like, you're going to be the third guy here. Like, when you sign this I imagine they pushed that contract over across the table and said, when you sign this, you were the third guy, but we're going to give you a max contract. And being that, I don't think he's ever been a third guy in his career, especially not. I mean, a lot of people say that he was this past year. I think scoring wise, I think he was their second option. Really, you could argue his first because Kawhi was out most of the year, and Harden's just not the same scorer he was in 2015, 2016, 2017. So, you really could argue he was the number 2 guy on that team. He comes into here, and if you have Embiid that averages like 30 and Max that averages 25, and you have Paul George that can average like 23. I mean, what's that, like almost 80 points, 70 something points there, between the three of them. So, I think that's what I think makes me the most excited about it is the fact that he can come in and be the third guy and kind of take a little bit of pressure off of himself, off of his body, and let Maxey do his thing and let Embiid do his thing, and he'll step up when he needs to. And I trust him to step up more when they need him than I did Tobias.
Oh, for sure. And for what it's worth, this is this past season, the most amount of games he's played since 2019. He played 74 games this year.
Yeah.
But his body stayed upright this year, which is good
I also looked up Monk. He resigned. So that new thing they do now, like as soon as the finals are over, the team that has that player can sign him right away. That's like the new thing this year. It was like the first year they did it. He was the first one to sign, like the night of the finals. That I think it was the night that they were over. He signed like a $78 million deal, I think, with 4 years, $78 million. Yep.
He's still in Sacramento, right?
Yep.
Yeah. He's turned into a pretty good player.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
so.
yeah. I liked him coming out of the draft too. I was a fan of his. I think that was
Yeah.
was that the Ben Simmons or the Fultz year?
I don't remember.
Yeah, it's something like that.
I don't know. I feel like every week we go over that.
I know.
Those two drafts. I have on X. I have seen people bring up Ben Simmons' name, and I want no parts of Ben Simmons. Like we can put
No,
that to
that's
bed,
not gonna
right?
happen.
Zero.
No, that's not gonna happen.
I don't like. I think now that the Clippers have kind of moved on there with PG and stuff like that, and even like the Lakers are looking for other pieces here. I think they've been connected to DeMar DeRozan and stuff like that. I mean, I feel like if you were going to take like a gamble, I mean, like to have somebody kind of get something out of Ben at this point, like I think you could really sell him on like, hey, you'll get to live in LA and stuff like that, and I think he would love that.
Yeah,
You know, even if he's not, you know, like as productive anymore as he even was at, you know, even the better years of his career. I mean, at this point, so maybe one of those teams take, but that contract he still makes a lot of money. Ben's still making a lot of money, so
yeah.
Well, yeah, that is true. What do we think of Andre Drummond? Obviously, he was here back in 21, 22. Traded him. I think that was in the Ben Simmons deal, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
So can I before you guys
go ahead.
tell me how excited you are. I'm gonna poop on the parade a little bit with Andre
Go
Drummond.
ahead. I wasn't going there, but go ahead.
Before we have a huge party about Andre Drummond. I love Andre Drummond. I think Andre Drummond's could start on 20 teams, right? I think he's a really good player. I think he got the really shitty end of a stick. He was 26, 27, 28 years old when the Detroit just said, you know what, we're done with you. And he came here and kind of revived his career a little bit. He was able to come off the bench and play his game, the physical game, get the rebounds. I could commit 5 fouls and I'm fine because I'm coming off the bench. I'll start games because Embiid's only going to play 55, 60, 65 games a year. And I think he really revived his career, and it's a shame that he's a backup, but my issue is I think he's too good and he's not going to get any playoff minutes. That was my only worry. He's going to play 10 minutes maybe in the playoffs. Maybe.
It's a playoffs. But my thing, Embiid's never 100% anyway.
Well, he's going to, but even if he's not 100%, he's still going to play. He was at 50% this year and he averaged 33. Like,
sure.
You know, so my worry is that, not worry, but my thing is you're going to allocate $10 million into the next 2 years for a guy that's not going to have playoff minutes. And that's not a lot of money at all. But that's just money you could use somewhere else. And you can say to Kelly Olynyk or name another, big guy big man that can spot start and not worry about playing in the playoffs much. That's my only thing with Drummond. I just think they could have allocated that money a little bit in other ways to help their roster, help themselves in the playoffs. I love Drummond. I think he's the perfect guy for regular season Embiid. It's just the postseason kind of worries me a little bit.
Yeah.
But I do love Drummond. I do. I think he's a great teammate. He's a great locker room guy.
Well, is it possible that maybe you could play Drummond more throughout the regular season and maybe get Embiid a little healthier heading into the playoffs? Maybe that's what it's.
Well, that's the idea. It's definitely the idea. It's just a matter of when the playoffs come. I just think they could have used that money to add a different
$5 million per year, right?
Eric Gordon just signed for a vet minimum. Kelly Oubre just signed for 2 years. What was it, $16 million? Like you can use $10 million for
I just look at 2 years, $52 million that Tobias signed for, and I'm like, yeah, $10 million.
But that's what he is,
too
though.
Bad.
But that's what he is. He's a $26 million player. Yeah, he is. Sure, he is.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
I do. I know. Right. You don't watch Tobias Harris. So
no, I don't. I choose not to. I actively choose not to watch Tobias Harris.
He's one. I always say it.
He's one of the most softest players in the league.
One of the most softest. Tobias Harris is a $26 million player. He's not a $43 million player. Sure. That's why he got crushed in the city. But back to Andre Drummond.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think I think too, like as Morey kind of continues to like mold this roster and stuff, those things are important. Like I think like the rotational pieces are going to be really key here because. I mean, last year we saw like especially in the postseason and stuff, even if you don't have like a fully healthy Joel, I mean, their non-Maxi and Joel minutes were atrocious. Like the guy, like I mean, you look at the Knicks had guys like Miles McBride just going
Yeah.
bonkers in that series, and it was like we didn't have anybody to like to do that. You know what I mean? Like we couldn't have like they didn't have a player, and that's also another like element of like having PG here is like every year in the playoffs you see guys in a series like for 2 games. You know, someone will get hot where like some of your stars are kind of off, but someone will go like, you know, a third guy on like a team that's got 3 stars. Somebody will go for like 30.
Look at the Celtics. Their best
Yeah.
player, who just broke the record for the biggest contract in the NBA, was terrible in some of the finals games.
Yeah.
And they won in 5.
And they had Jalen. Thank God, you know, they had Jalen Brown and those other guys to kind of like step up in those games. So, I mean, well, that like I think that's still kind of like something that like throughout the NBA is kind of like a thing now, right? Like we always talked about the big 3, and now it's kind of like, is it like can you get by with 2 and then like tons of depth behind them, like that like maybe that's possible as well. I mean, I don't know, you know,
See,
but
I think you're looking at, it used to be the big 3, and then the last few years they've tried to do the 2 guys in the depth, and I think that it's becoming 4 guys. I think look at the Celtics.
Right.
They have Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Porzingis, and even White, who played amazing this year. But I just think he's like a throwing guy. You know what I mean? Like I think whoever got into that 5th spot was probably, maybe he played above his ability. But like,
Right.
Look at Denver. Like Denver has Jokic. Even the year they won, they have Jokic, Murray, Gordon, and Michael Porter Jr. That's 4 guys.
Right.
And who was the last team? Who's in the West? Minnesota. Minnesota has 4 guys. I mean, I think Gobert's a little, you know, I'm not a big Gobert guy, but like
Right.
Edwards, Karl-Anthony Towns, McDaniels, and even their starting 5. McConnelly's not a bad player, you know, and Gobert. So like Naz Reid coming off the bench as a 6th man. Like I think those teams have depth and they have the 4 guys. It's just a matter of like, I guess it's a matter of the owner wanting to pay, you know, overtax the taxes and stuff like that.
Right. So, I mean, like, that's kind of where, you know, we'll see what the rest of the offseason looks like. And, yeah, you know, now that, like, they have PG and they brought back some guys that they liked. And I don't know. We'll see what they end up doing. But, like, I think Drummond, like, that should be, you know, he should be serviceable enough, I think, in those non-Embiid games, you know, when you're playing, like, in Charlotte in January, you know, and you don't really.
It's going to be better than Paul Reed.
Yeah.
I can't stand Paul Reed, but
yeah. So
Not a city loves him though.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know how they didn't let him go after Utah. They made that offer sheet or whatever it was, and I mean that seemed crazy to kind of just to match that deal.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So,
but I also agree with your point. The because you can't expect your best player, even your best players. You can't expect your players like Maxey and Embiid to put in a full 7 games. It never happens in the NBA, and it's always nice to have. You need your best players to at least show up for 4 games in a 7-game series. So those games that Maxey and Embiid are not showing up, I think Paul George is perfect. I think he's the guy that's going to step up.
Yeah. I think I agree with that. I think like, you know, he'll be, you know, as long as guys are healthy, you know, I think like that's the big key. And you know, otherwise we're going to be looking at like a lot of what we looked at last year, which was just kind of, you know, Tyrese and a bunch of guys like, and you know, that wasn't good enough, you know. So
Dom, you talk about in the playoffs having the 3rd guy to step up when the other 2 aren't pulling the weight or having a night off. We kind of said the same thing about Harden. Like, do you think Paul George brings more than Harden did?
Yeah, because I don't think Harden's style. I've said this about Harden forever. I don't think his style ever worked in the playoffs. I don't think you could just play ISO ball in the playoffs. I don't think you could be this flashy player in the playoffs. I think the playoffs are a much different animal, and I don't think he's built for the playoffs. He's not built for that physical game. He's he comes up small a lot. Like if you go back to Game 7 against Boston, not this from 2 years ago, I guess. The Game 7 against the Sixers, you can point out 4, 5, 6 times where Harden has a clear, lane to the hoop and passes it out, and he's always been that guy in his career. I just think that was the best thing you were going to get outside of Tyrese Halliburton for that trade. So that's why I was,
Sure.
you get what you can because the guy who traded was never going to play. So, I'm not a huge Harden guy. But it was the best thing they were going to get, and so
yeah. The thing I do want to talk about, it's not a huge surprise, I don't think, to anybody. Tyrese Maxey gets a 5-year max contract. I think Maxey's like kind of right on the cusp of like superstardom. Like I think he's right there, and I think he could get there this season. But this is no surprise, right? Like everybody saw this coming.
Yeah. I think Tyrese was going to get this deal. I think maybe they could have. I think they had the ability to wait another year, but I mean, there was no I don't think there was any reason to wait. All-star this year. I mean, he was excellent. Easy guy to root for too. And he really kind of stepped up this year. And his game. That's too, like, at the top of the show, he had mentioned, Dom had mentioned about, this team never getting, out of the second round here and stuff. And those reps, especially for a young guy, they really matter in the playoffs. You can kind of learn the game changes a little bit where it's like, half court offenses, I think, matter a lot more. The game slows down and gets a lot slower in the playoffs. So, I think like this team being a perennial playoff contender and having a couple deep runs, and Maxey being the youngest guy of that group, that'll be really, really good for him and for the Sixers, if he's going to be here long term, to have that experience, because he'll know what it takes.
So I don't know if you guys saw this today. The Sixers are the first team in NBA history to have 3 guys make over $200 million on their contract.
Really?
Yeah. So
the first time ever?
Yep. I have 3 guys with $200 million plus contracts. So
the Warriors teams didn't do that, huh? Oklahoma City.
No, I mean, you think about it. You think about it. Durant signed there 10 years ago? What did he sign? 2015 offseason or 2015, 2016, right?
Yeah.
It's almost 10 years ago.
Yeah, the money's
a lot different than it was 10 years ago.
But even in Brooklyn a couple years ago, I feel like had a lot of big money guys. Harden, Durant, and who was the third? Was it Kyrie?
Yeah, but that was 4 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was 2020.
Yeah. Yep.
So there's a lot of money to be made in those 4 years. So, seeing how great Maxey is right now, just at 23 years old, imagine how good he's going to be at the end of this contract. If he stays at what he's doing, I mean, wait until he's in his physical prime. At 28, 27, 28, 29 years old, and just imagine the player that he's going to continue to grow as. It's really cool to see, and it's not something we get a ton of here in the city, where it's a guy we've drafted and we've developed, and he's become a fan favorite, and everybody loves him, and he plays hard, and he hits his shot. He checks all the boxes. And when does that ever happen?
He's only 24,
23, 24, something like that.
23. Yeah. So at the end of his deal, he's maybe, 28, 27, 28, 29.
It's literally what I just said, Mike.
Yeah, listen, it's fair enough. So the one thing, obviously the other thing that happened,
he's 23.
Over the last, 23. Over the last handful of days, the draft, right? They picked, where was it? 16, right?
Yep.
Yeah, 16th overall. Jared McCain from Duke. And then they picked in the second round of 41, Adam Bona. How are we pronouncing that name? Adem Bona.
I think it is Bona.
Yeah, Bona. Okay, there you go. Do you guys have any opinion about either of these guys?
I like McCain. I think I think he's very similar, to at least personality wise and stuff. Like everything that I've heard, that he's just a really, really easy guy to root for. He kind of has that infectious energy that Tyrese has. And that I was fully prepared for the team to trade that pick on draft day. I thought for sure that they were going to be looking at something and that pick was going to automatically be in play. And but I mean, he should get some time this year. Like I don't think it's just, he should be a player that he's going to get some minutes in the regular season and stuff like that. I would imagine he's going to play a little bit. And he has the kind of skill set, I think, for the Sixers and their guard group. He could probably help them. I like the pick. I think he's going to be a good player.
I totally agree.
I'm just over the whole cute little TikTok dances.
Guess what? If he, I was talking to my brother-in-law about this yesterday.
I don't like it.
If he goes 1 for 9 from 3, he's going to get crushed in this city.
Yes.
If he goes 5 for 9 from 3, nobody's going to give a shit.
You're correct.
So just go 5 for 9.
Okay, all right. Yeah, sure. Easier said than done.
Yeah. He shot 41. I think he was the second best shooter in the draft personally. He shot 41% from 3 in college, which is, it's college, but still you got to hit the shots. He creates his own shot. He's a good passer. Played on a very big school, obviously in Duke. I agree. I think you're going to see him play some minutes. It's not going to be like Tyrese Maxey where Doc Rivers just would not play rookies. Just was against the idea of playing rookies. I think you'll see him play, and I think you'll see similarities in rookie Tyrese as you'll see in rookie Jared McCain as you saw in rookie Tyrese. He'll play 15 plus minutes a game. Mm-hmm. I think he may actually average more than Tyrese in points because Tyrese wasn't a great shooter coming out of college, where McCain is. So I think Tyrese averaged 15 minutes and 8 or 9 points or something, or might even been 11. I think you could see Jared McCain averaging 15, 16 minutes and probably hitting that 11, 12 mark. Shooting 37% from 3, 37 plus. He's going to get open looks.
Maxey in his rookie season, 15.3 minutes per game.
Yeah.
And 8 points per game.
Okay. So you could probably see McCain at 16 minutes a game, 15, 16, 17 minutes a game, averaging, double digits, low double digits. But just because he's obviously a better shooter as Maxey was coming into the NBA. I think he's also a good trade bait too. I think there are teams that I think if McCain's 6'5", he's a top 5 pick.
I was about to bring up the size, yeah.
His size,
and you pair him with Maxey. That's two small guys back here.
But Maxey, even McCain isn't bad at getting to the rim. But Maxey's good at getting to the rim up until the playoffs. That's when things get a little tough to get to the rim. He's just got to fit. He's got. I've said on the show he's got to get more physical. It's not his fault because he's 23. When he's 28, he'll be obviously a lot stronger. Yeah. But yeah, I mean I think they're going to have open looks. It doesn't worry me about their size if they're both on the court together because I think they'll get open looks. I do. I think especially if they play with Embiid and Paul George. I've seen projections for the starting lineup. I don't know that McCain is a starter. There are some people that have projected him as a starter. I don't know that it'll start that way. At least it may manifest into that. But
well, who's your starting 5 if it started today?
My starting 5 if it started today would be Maxey at the 1. I think Gordon's a bench player, but if it started today, I think they're going to give him a shot at the 2 to start. And then I would go Oubre at the 3. He's another one that could be a bench / starter. And then Paul George, and then Embiid. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. You already said Maxey. Yep. All right. Fair enough. All right.
Yep.
Anything else about the Sixers or NBA in general, free agency?
Really quick, the Gordon.
Yeah,
I actually like that pickup a lot. He had a good year last year. I think he played 27 or 28 minutes. He averaged I think it was
another
11.
Houston guy, whatever.
Yeah, somebody tweeted yesterday after they signed him, like Daryl Morey only knows like 15 players.
Yes, and they've all played for Houston at one point,
and Philadelphia at this point.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the signing. It's a vet minimum. Like I said, he could spot start. He could start. He could come off the bench. He could be. I think he's got a 6-man award. He had a good year.
It's a value signing at that point.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean they didn't overpay. I mean it's a win-win. So I think he shot close to 38 or 39. May have actually been over 40, but 11 points, 28 minutes. Which will probably do this here, whether he comes off the bench or not. But yeah, I think it's a good. He was always supposed to be a Sixer too for like 7 years. It was like, oh, we're gonna get Aaron Gordon, and then of course it happened. You know, that's what happens in Philly, right? Like we always get the guy we were supposed to get 7 years ago at the end of his career.
Prime when he's fallen off.
Chris Webber, yeah.
Well, he was young. I mean, like he was a sick athlete. Eric Gordon. He was a really good athlete.
We won a 6-man.
Yeah.
He averaged. I think he averaged like 20 1 year. I think was like his. Or I think he averaged 18 the year he won the 6-man.
Yeah.
Averaging 18 as a 6-man that's pretty good.
You got to be efficient to do that.
Yeah.
Talking about the rest of the NBA, Bronny going to Lakers is the most obvious thing ever, right? Like that was gonna happen.
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't. The Bronny thing. It's a shame. I think. I wish like we could just kind of call it for what it was. Like, he ended up in LA with the Lakers because his dad's there.
Sure.
Right? That's what I mean. Like,
it's the biggest example of nepotism is all it is. Like,
right. And it's like, I don't even really necessarily have like an issue with it. It's just, like Bronny's a young player. He's a 2nd round pick, like when you think about in the NBA, how many 2nd round picks, go on to be anything more than like rotational guys. I don't really think that like if that, and I just wish we could kind of just say like, hey, like this
he's totally been being set up for failure. Like,
yeah,
so much.
I actually feel bad for him.
Yeah.
Almost. Well,
I mean, how could you feel bad for a billionaire son? But like,
yes, but his father is also an asshole for literally naming him LeBron James Jr. Like, you're setting the kid up for failure.
Yeah, I mean, I know there are interviews that he said he's regretted that a lot, but
I could totally understand why.
Yeah,
it doesn't do him any favors here at the next level. No. And his father's such a like LeBron is so. I mean, he's been such a he's such a rarefied air of an athlete that
he might be the greatest athlete ever.
Yeah, he might be one of the greatest, if not the greatest athlete ever. And, that's not fair to anybody. Like, even if Bronny goes on and has a nice, career, it's not fair,
the biggest critic of him is going to be LeBron. And the only person that I think really cares about him is going to be LeBron. And, it's going to be interesting to see the father versus teammate thing. Right. Because I don't know that he has that switch in him where he's gonna say, "Yo, Bronny, this is teammate talking." I don't know if he's gonna have that.
Right.
Being a parent myself, I don't know if I'd have that in me. You know what I mean? Like right. to tell my daughter, if we work together, listen, you gotta fucking do. You know what I mean? Getting in his head as a teammate, as LeBron James, as the greatest athlete, one of the greatest basketball players ever. Yeah,
I love the fact that you just compared yourself to LeBron James. Those two things are totally alike.
No, not at all. I'm not comparing myself to LeBron at all. I'm way better. No, but I just think the most pressure that's going to be on him is his father, and
yeah,
I'm just curious to see if it's because of the teammate or because of the father.
Right. Yeah, I think it's. I've seen the stuff online's hilarious. If you see any of the memes about LeBron and they're oh, what's Bronny gonna do when he J.R. Smiths him?
There was one I saw today. There's one I saw today that it was him and Bronny, and LeBron is grabbing his arm and pulling him back, and it's when Bronny goes 0 for 7 from the field, and LeBron's I forget what it said. It was nah, let me get it or something like that.
Yeah, he's a kid that should have just stayed at college. Stay at college for the 4 years, develop, and I mean, there's no reason for him to be in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, more guys now, though. I mean, that's the way it. The one and done thing's very real, and it's
for the high end athlete. I get it. For a guy,
what's funny?
Him, it seems weird.
I just recently looked up the top 50 players, and obviously it's a subjective list. So it was I think it was Bleacher Report going into this season that just passed, the top 50 players. I looked it up. There's 15 guys that were 4-year college players. Damian Lillard,
Wow.
Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, like there are a good Klay Thompson. There are a lot of big name players that go for 4 years. So like that's why the one and done. It's like I agree. You have to be a super freak athlete to really come out as a one and done. The 4-year option is really not terrible.
Especially nowadays. Now the college players get paid.
Right.
Well, you could just stay there,
Right.
Yeah.
and still make your money, and it's not NBA money probably, but it's not nothing.
Yeah.
So but yeah, let's anything else with the NBA and the draft and everything before we move on to some Flyers talk?
No, I think that's it.
All right, so we got the Flyers. Big day. Matvei Michkov has signed his entry level deal. The man Russian is here, as Torts calls him. It's he was drafted obviously basically a year ago. Nobody thought he would be over here this soon. Somehow it's happened. He got let out his contract. We talked about it last week, Dom. But yeah, I'm super excited.
Yeah. I mean, this is the most, I think this is the most celebrated prospect they've had since Lindros. It's been that.
That's not hyperbole.
Yeah, and it's going to be really, really exciting to kind of see how this dynamic works. I mean, even if the Flyers do, which it kind of looks that way, they're probably going to run it back just with Michkov, like with the same, virtually the same group, unless something changes here later in the summer. They're able to find a deal or a trade that they really like. It's probably going to be the same group, and they're just going to have Michkov there. But he's going to be worth the price of admission every night, and seeing how this dynamic plays out here. And we get to see this really just offensive wizardry that he possesses, and we'll be able to see that on a nightly basis. And I don't really know exactly what to expect, but I mean, I've already seen people pencil him in for to be a finalist for the Calder already, the league's rookie of the year. And, it would be amazing.
Mike bet his overs, didn't you?
Yep. 46 and a half points.
Is that what it was?
46 and a half. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, he's going to get the PP one time, and he's going to skate in the top 6. So I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility that he puts up over 45.
Especially because they were in the playoffs essentially in going into April,
Yeah.
And if you look at their power play percentage from last, I mean, they were dreadful. So if adding him to the power play makes it even slightly better, that puts them in the playoffs. Now, obviously, you don't expect the season to go the same way as it did last year, right? You don't have obviously Sean Walker now for an entire season because when he got traded, obviously the defense core kind of fell apart. But I don't really know what to expect, but it's excitement for me. I'm just excited to see it.
So I wanted to take a step back really quick, Mark. You mentioned about the possibility of maybe them possibly adding something this offseason via trade.
Brady Tkachuk, let's have some fun.
Well, I wasn't. So Mike and I were in a conversation today with some other people that didn't really agree with what I was saying. So I wasn't even gonna bring up Brady Tkachuk, but I was just gonna say, because I've seen a couple names that kind of floating around that possibly that the Flyers could maybe be interested in. And Mike and I have mentioned a couple names the last few weeks on the show.
Shane Pinto, I think, was one.
Yeah, the kid from Carolina, I think, was one. Yeah. I was just curious. Do you think that they could have something big this offseason later in the summer via trade, or do you think they don't pull the trigger yet? They keep what do they have? They have 6 draft picks in the top 40, or projected to be the top 40 next year. Do you think they wait a little bit to maybe move those, because they're not going to make 6 picks in the top 40 probably? Right. So do you think that they could trade those picks now to make a big move this summer, or do you think they wait closer to draft next year?
I think they may. Part of me really feels like they're going to wait till next year, and that's going to be when the handcuffs come off of everything, and they're going to start really aggressively kind of trying to change things here. Next year's draft is supposed to be a really, really good draft. And to have those, to be armed with those 6 picks that could be potentially in the top 40, as you said, to move some of those in trades and things like that, I think that may be the time where like maybe a lot of the work they're doing right now is kind of laying groundwork with some teams like, hey, like we have our eye on this player. And I don't know who those players will be because it could change over the next year. Like someone may become available that isn't available currently. And so I mean, I think it's really about 2025 for them, like as
Okay.
far as addressing, like shoring up some of these things. I mean, this year they have a lot of dead cap on their books from buyouts and things like that. I think they're looking at their roster right now where they kind of look at it like, hey, like we're gonna run it back. We have enough guys in the organization right now that'll play for us. And next year we'll have a lot of the dead cap off the books, and we'll try to start wheeling and dealing.
Yeah, they're paying what 5 or 6 players to not play for them this year.
Yeah.
like-
What's that? Like
So-
Kevin Hayes,
Kevin
and
Hayes, Cal Peterson,
D'Angelo.
Tony D'Angelo, Cam
Yeah.
Atkinson now. There might be one more. Ryan Ellis.
Johansson, right?
Yep. Ryan
Johansson.
Hansen. Yep.
Mhm.
Yeah, I so Mike brought up Brady Kachuk, right?
Yeah.
So a couple weeks ago we were talking about the possibility of like next off season they sign Draisaitl, they trade for Kachuk.
Let's get
and that's
weird.
that's your first line. Them two and Michkov. But obviously seeing that Brady Kachuk is available, could potentially be available.
I don't even know.
I don't
really
think.
is.
Yeah, I don't think Ottawa's going to trade Brady Kachuk this season. I think if things go bad again there, if they have the season that they've had the last few years where they've had expectations to be better and they're just not, I think you could see him be disgruntled and say like, listen, I want to cut bait. I want to be traded. Or they may just say, you know what, we're just going to rebuild and we're going to ship off our best players for assets.
I
That's
want
kind
him
of where
more
like that
now.
came from.
I want him more now than I did 2 or 3 weeks ago. Because when I watched him look at his brother winning the Stanley Cup, he is so hungry for it now. He might kill somebody to win a Stanley Cup.
He is the perfect guy for the city because he scores goals and he plays hard and he's tough. And I just think he's born to be a Flyer.
Yeah. Yeah, he's very, very throwback, like Philly athlete, Flyer type.
You can't use that phrase "born to be a Flyer." Isn't that what Cutter Gauthier said? You can't.
Oh, did he really?
I think he said I'm like born to be a Flyer or something along that phrase when he was drafted. You can't say that phrase.
Yeah, but I think he's. I agree with that, Dom. I think like things would really have to go off the rails again in Ottawa for him to kind of come to them, to go to them rather and be like, hey, what are we doing here, kind of thing. And I think that would be the only way. It's still so hard to kind of like imagine. Like I look at, there's always and I hope that the Flyers are kind of weary of this, but there's always like it happens in the media. It happens. I think it does happen in the sport every year where, a team wins, the team wins the cup and it's such a war of attrition to get there. And when they do, there's always a bunch of teams that turn around and they try to win last year's cup. They try to build a team that was, would have won last year. And, I think like the stuff with Brady and like his brother, like with Matthew, I mean, I think that's where a lot of that kind of came from. I think that was people connecting the dots. They saw how happy Brady was for Matt winning it. And, Matt obviously came over in a big time trade with the Flames. So, a lot of things worked out for Florida, like where Gustav Forsling's one of their better defenders, long-term contract there. He was a waiver
waivers.
Claim.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Yeah.
He was a waiver claim. I mean, like, so
And then even the Kachuk trade took just massive balls. I mean, you trade Huberdeau, who's one of your like all-time point scorers.
Yeah.
And you attach Weir to it, who's probably your second best defenseman at the time.
Yeah.
It was a ballsy move and it worked out.
Yeah, it was. And they've had a number of moves like that where that's kind of played out that way. But I don't know that you can go into every offseason and it's really easy to for us to sit here and be like, you know what, we need a Brady Kachuk. You
Oh,
know,
it's extremely easy. Trust me.
yeah.
I've been doing it for 2 weeks.
Yep, yep.
And it's like we could sit there and like
Dude,
you're not the only one doing it. Like it's
They went on the clock at 16 this draft. I'm like, Brady Kachuk, Brady Kachuk, Brady Kachuk, Brady Kachuk, trade it.
12. I think
Yeah.
you mean 12.
12. That's what I meant. Sorry.
The Sixers were 60.
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's like it's really, really hard to get your hands on those players, and sometimes they don't always become available. And but like we were just talking about the 25 draft and the things that they have, like all the assets they have at their disposal. They could feasibly, like, without like, you know, trying to go over the top with it, they could feasibly make a deal like that.
Yeah.
You know, based around a lot of futures, still have a little bit left over to use to kind of address the future and go get something that can help them today. And that's a really good place to be. I think they're going to try to. I think this year, though, coming in the next season, it's going to be about Mitch Koff, and they're just going to eat it for a year, and then maybe next year we start seeing a lot of movement there.
Do you guys have any idea next year, like who's available via free agency?
Draisaitl.
Yeah, well, outside of him,
I'd have to look. I don't know off the top
Yeah.
of my head. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
yeah.
So,
How do you? Because I asked Mike this a couple weeks ago. Just kind of getting different people's opinions. Because there are talks about Shane Pinto. How do you feel about him? Do you think he could be a first line center one day? I know he's a bigger body.
Mhm.
I don't know much about him. Other than the fact that he's like 6'2", 6'3", plays center. A lot of people seem to really, at least on Twitter, seem to be really into the idea of trading for him. Do you think he's worth giving up these? No, maybe not these assets, but some assets to potentially be a second line center. Maybe a first line. I don't know. I don't know what he is.
yeah.
Any opinion on that?
The Pinto thing's interesting. I think, like, I'm not as high on Pinto. Like, he probably tops out as like a solid second line center. I don't
agree.
see the potential 1C thing. He does bring a lot of qualities, though, that like the Flyers actually need. Like, he would actually be a nice player to have Mitch Koff attached to, I think, like, because he can do a lot of different things. He's a big body. He gets to the net. He knows how to score. Like, there's kind of like somebody who can kind of think like that. I think to put with Mitch Koff, who kind of thinks the game at such a high level, sometimes it's good to just have, like, you look at Edmonton, right? Like, he gets a lot of flack up there, but having Zach Hyman, a guy that's just good in between the dots and below the dots, and that's kind of where his bread and butter is. And he scores 50 goals because they're going to attach him to Connor McDavid, who knows how to get him the puck everywhere. You know what I mean? It's so
It
like, yeah, it helps. And so maybe there's a little bit of that. I guess that depends on like how quickly everybody thinks that Mitch Koff can kind of, go out there and just kind of just start create dynamic offense by himself. It would be amazing if he could, but Pinto's a tough one. I think it would probably be like a player for player swap of some kind. Like, I don't know.
I've been saying for the last couple of weeks. Sorry to cut you off.
No.
I've been saying for the last couple of weeks. I would be interested in trading Joel Farabee for like a top 6 center. First line center. Obviously, I'd want more than a second line center. Somebody who's capable of playing the first line center. I don't know if you're going to get that for Joel Farabee, but if you could swap Joel Farabee for a top line center, I'll do it all day long.
Yeah, I was actually just going to mention him. As like a 1-for-1 type of player. I mean, type of move rather. I mean, I'm still pretty high on Joel. I know that like he's kind of, I don't know if the Flyers weren't particularly happy with him after this year or what it was, but
I just don't love the compete level personally. Like, I think he's got talent and he still has room to grow. He's still young. Is he even 22 yet? Like, he's fairly young, isn't he?
Yeah,
so,
I think he's about 23.
Is he 23? Yeah. So he still has room to grow. Obviously, I just don't love the compete level from on a nightly basis. But
So I know Mike's opinion. What about Zagar? Is his name Zagaris from Anaheim? Zegras. That's what it is. Sorry.
Yeah.
How do you feel about him?
I really like Trevor Zegras. If there was a avenue to acquire a player like that, I think that
Is
Just-
he a first line center? Do you think, or is he a second line guy?
I think he could be. I really do. Zegras is one of those guys too. I think like where I think about the way the game has kind of evolved and changed. He's kind of one of these guys too, where like the young guy, like if you listen to a lot of young fans, they really dig Zegras. Like they think he's cool
Sure.
and like a great player
It's
and
flashy.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think like to drop someone like that in a big market like Philadelphia, I think he would really become like a beloved player.
Mike hates that.
I
Hates
hate
the
what?
Flash.
No,
Hates
I don't
the
hate.
Flash.
I don't hate the Flash. I just
Hates
think
Bryce Harper.
I think
Hates the
Zegras-
flashy.
Yeah, yep. Mhm.
Loves Gabe Kapler. It's crazy.
I think Zegras has room to grow and be a potential first line center one day, but I think he has a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
I think he's incredibly flashy, has insane hands, can deke like crazy, but he's not particularly. He doesn't have like the greatest speed. Yeah, he's quick, but he doesn't have like the greatest speed in the world. Doesn't have the greatest shot. He's not great at defense. Like I think in order to be a first line center, I need him to do a lot more work. And can he get there? Definitely,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. I've always been a fan of his game and like all those things you mentioned are definitely things that
yeah.
he's not a complete player yet, but you know, offensively he's still pretty like he still has some real skill. And
Yeah.
you know, he would help inject a lot of that skill that the Flyers desperately need on the power play and things like that. He would help all that. So I would be on board with Zegras, and I think that would take that would probably be a pretty significant trade where some of those futures we mentioned earlier would probably be in play for something like that, I'd imagine.
Okay.
So it's July 1st. Yes, this is July 1st. So Travis Konechny is officially eligible for an extension.
Yeah.
Well, how do you see that playing out? Do you think he signs the extension? They trade him before it's over? Do they let him walk? How do you feel about Travis Konechny?
And if he signs the extension, how much?
Yes.
Yeah. I go back and forth about this all the time because, you know, it really depends on, I guess, what the Flyers think their timeline is. And, you know, Briere spoke today, right? He addressed the media today. And I felt like he had said two different things regarding that. Like, they really love Travis Konechny, as do a lot of Flyers fans. And, you know, they love his game. They love the way he plays. Tortorella's a big fan, all that stuff. But at the same time, he doesn't expect this team to be very good next year or maybe even the following year. And at least by the comments he made. And it's like, okay, so why are we talking about this like long-term extension for a player on the wrong side of 30, you know, when you don't think you're going to be any good in, you know, a few years' time? It feels like you're punting those years of early on where you're paying a guy a lot of money to be, quite frankly, one of the best players on a bad team. And it's just like, I don't know if that's worth the investment for this club right now when I consider all the things that are going on here with the team. Michkov being here. You look at the right wing depth, you know, Konechny's a natural right winger. Like, where does he fit in there? There's Michkov, there's Tippett, there's Tyson Forrester. These are kind of guys like Tippett's already locked up. So these are guys that are kind of like here and a part of your future and your present. So it's tough. I think like I'm not against the Travis Konechny extension if they're going to go, if they're willing to sign him and then get a little aggressive next year where like trying to actively address the team so they're like in contention or at least a perennial playoff team. But if it's supposed to be like a slow cook rebuild, I really don't see how that makes much sense for them.
You see, I think what Briere and company are thinking is different than what they're saying, and they've been a really good job, done a really good job of being like transparent with the media. But as much as he's not saying that Michkov being here changes the timeline a little bit, I think in the back of their minds it does. I think it has to.
Yeah.
So I would be surprised if Konechny wasn't here. I think they do lock him up. To what? I don't know, because like I'll tell you what, after the last couple days seeing some of the extensions, he's insane for asking for like 9.5 or 10 or whatever it was. Like Sam Reinhart just got 8.5-ish, 8.6,
Yeah.
I think, and that's a 50. What did he get? 53 goals, 55 goals, something like that. What
He
did
almost
get this
scored
year?
60. I
So,
think he had like
almost okay.
57.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Travis Konechny ain't a 57 goal scorer. So
He
if
does
Sam
have 2 straight
Reinhart
years 30 plus.
30 plus ain't 57.
Who's the last 30 goal scorer for the Flyers?
Carter? Nah, probably not.
Wayne.
Probably
I think
not
Wayne
that
Simmons
far.
had 1 or 2 years where he
Yeah.
hit 30, but like,
Giroux
but
had
still,
a 30-goal year.
yeah. But like, when's the last guy we've had? When's the last guy we've had 2 straight 30-goal seasons?
Sure,
Yeah.
but when you see a guy that just got 57,
I'm
get
not. I don't
8.6
disagree.
per year. I get it. It's Florida state tax and all that thing. Maybe that's the reason they got him so cheap. But if he signs, well, how many years was that? That's 7 years or the Reinhardt contract? Do you remember, Mark, off the top of your head?
I want to say it was 7. Yeah.
Okay. So 8.6. I mean, Travis Konechny, if Reinhardt gets 8.6, what do you look at? 7.75, 7.5. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm at with Konechny.
Yeah, too, it's like I can see a scenario where they go like 8 times 8 for
Yeah.
him. I'm just terrified of this team kind of like in a cap situation where they're kind of like they're having success and they're ready to compete. And, this ends up like a Jeff Skinner type of deal, like what happened in Buffalo here, like just recently with, the Sabres and having the buyout, however many, I don't remember what was left on Skinner's deal, but I mean,
4 years, I think, something like.
yeah,
3
it
or
gets
4 years,
tricky. It gets tricky when you're the best player on a bad team, and you're due big money. That I do think TK he deserves. I just don't know that. I just don't know if I want the Flyers to be the team to give it to.
Yeah.
Him.
By the way,
actually,
Sean Couturier was last Flyer with 230 plus. It was
Okay.
17, 18, 18, 19. But go ahead.
Yep.
Sorry.
that feels like so long ago too. Because now I'm
It
like
does
so
feel
soured.
like-
2 straight
I'm
76
so
point seasons. I think it was.
yeah, I'm so soured on Sean Couturier right now.
Yeah, 2 straight
But,
76 point seasons.
Yeah. All right. So I'm somebody who I've been real critical of TK maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, but he's grown so much since
I wanted
taking
him.
over.
I wanted to shoot him into the sun.
Yeah,
Three
same.
years ago.
But he's grown into such a complete player. His penalty killing's awesome.
Mhm.
I've grown to really, really, really enjoy TK in Philly.
Same. I'm a fan. It would suck to see him go, but like just the.
Let
You
me
know, I
throw a hypothetical
Sure.
to you. Sorry, go ahead. Finish your point.
No, I was just gonna say, like I just the cap part of it is such an obstacle, and also it's like at the same time when it comes to the contracts and stuff like that, even though we may be looking at projections for the salary cap ceiling and it may be going up in a few years, I struggle with giving a guy money that like is supposedly down the road going to be a better deal because the cap ceiling, like it's not going to take up as much of your cap, but in the moment it does. So it's kind of like we're kind of counting money that's not there when we're trying to like project it out,
Yeah.
So I guess this isn't really a hypothetical now that I'm thinking about it, but it's what I think you can. So I looked it up. He's 26 years old, or he'll be 27 this upcoming season. I think if you let's say you give him that 8.5 million, whatever it is, 7.5, between the 7.5 and 8.5, if you give him that money and in the next year or two you really start to draft and develop and trade and sign players and become really good, I think that works out. I do. I think that it's just, but you guys are right. It's just about the money. It's really a matter of how much he really wants, because like we said it with the Phillies and the Sixers now, it's like the end of that contract doesn't mean anything to me right now. And I don't think it should mean
but the Flyers are in a far different position.
Well, that's
than
what
the
I mean.
Sixers
That's what I was
are.
going to say.
Yeah.
I think the Sixers and the Phillies are in a different position. But the Phillies were in that position when they signed Harper, were they not?
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
but I don't
Konechny's
think
not
anybody-
Harper, but
right, Konechny's not Harper.
Right.
And were people saying that about Harper's contract when he signed it?
what?
That people were concerned that it was going to end poorly. I don't think anybody really thought that.
Well, you look at a $13 million or 13-year contract. He's going to be 40, no matter who it is. Miguel Cabrera is one of the brightest players we've ever seen. His last 5 years were horrible. So, like, you kind of just assume, maybe Bryce Harper's different, but like, and again, Konechny doesn't equal Bryce Harper, but
Sure.
Konechny could be a really good second line forward that you're going to probably overpay a little bit the first couple of years. And like you said, the cap goes up. So like eventually it's going to be pretty,
Right.
what's the word I'm looking for?
value.
Yeah, market value.
Yeah.
And like, and from the ages of 27 to 32, 33, it's, you
Right.
maybe you do that.
Right. He
just
plays
bites a
too.
bullet.
I think with TK too, it's like he's a smaller player. He plays a physical style. He's forever getting beat up out there. Like and that's how he plays. He's like he kind of plays on the edge. He kind of he likes to stir the pot, mix it up, but he's a tiny guy, and
Sure.
and he can take a beating for a lot of those years, and it's not about the player at all. Like I'm with you guys. Like I like TK a lot. I like Konechny's game a lot. How he produced like on the penalty kill this year was a really, really positive thing. And, really kind of showed like more, he's really kind of been the face of the team here, like the last year and a half where like, he's grown up here, he's a younger guy that came through the system and stuff like that and was a Flyers draft pick. And he's kind of like, you have that connection to those homegrown guys and stuff like that. So I think they want to do right by him. And I think he would be hard to see go, but it's just like, it's not about his game or who he is as a player or a person. It's just the money that just makes it.
It's the way the team is going.
Yeah. It's kind of like where we are. And, like, does it really fit? And I hate using that word timeline, but it always comes up. But,
Sure.
I just don't know how it fits the timeline, depending if this is like, a 2 to 3 year process, or are you looking at 3, 4, 5 years out? Like, then that's a lot different.
I have a quick trivia for you guys. So Travis Konechny was the second first round pick in, what was it, 2015 or 2014, whatever year it was. Do you guys remember who the first pick in that draft was? Yeah.
Provorov, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, I was a huge Provorov guy.
7 overall Provorov, right? And then TK would have been what, 21?
20. I think it was a little bit later. Yeah, I think it was a little bit later.
24 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other thing, Flyers, I want to talk about is the draft. People seem to be up in arms. I don't know if people still are. I listened to your water cooler talk recap, Mark. I'm curious if your opinions changed. But the first round pick, so originally they're on the clock at 12. And for some reason the pick seemed like it was taking 7 to 8 minutes for them to announce it.
I told you guys, I was sitting there, ka-chuck.
Yeah.
And then it went to 0 for like 3 minutes, and I'm like, ka-chuck.
Yeah. So it turns out they trade back one pick later, 13. They draft Jet Luchenko. What are your thoughts on how the first round played out? For I just specifically pick 13 for the Flyers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was kind of, I did a lot of like my own draft prep for that.
Mhm.
Like I usually kind of try to zero in on like the top 10, 15 players.
And we were supposed to do the draft coverage, and I kind of fucked that up. So
way to go.
It's all good. It's all good. So I do that every year anyway, just for my own kind of
You made the poor guy work so hard.
I know.
And then the fucking day of, you were just like,
it wasn't the day of. It was just like a week or two before. But
yeah, I had some notes.
We're just gonna go with the day of.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, anywhere that I had looked or any mock draft that I had looked at was, Luchenko was very far down the board. And I also like had kind of like, as I think everybody does when they do that kind of thing, I kind of fell in love with a handful of the players. And one of them was Konsta Helenius from, Finland. And he was one of the centermen available. So when the Flyers are coming up to 12 and I see him there and I'm like, this has got to be their guy. Like, this is the best. He's probably the best center available. And they throw the curveball for Luchenko. And, again, kind of like similar to what I was just saying about Konechny, was like, it's really not about Luchenko as like a player at all. Like, I think like as a prospect, there's a lot to like there. Like, great skating ability. He was a really good player on a bad team for the Guelph Storm in the Ontario Hockey League last year. And I think that like maybe there's some like projection there on the Flyers part where they're hoping he's also one of the youngest players in the draft. And so
Missed
I
the
think
cutoff by 3 weeks, I believe.
yeah, he might be the youngest player actually. He might be
Yeah.
the youngest player. And I think he was, as I've kind of stepped away from it and have kind of slept on it the last couple of days. I mean, I like him as a prospect. I just don't know if where they picked it, like you could justify it. Maybe you could have moved back a little bit more and even still have gotten him and added more assets. It really wasn't about Zeev Bouillon, the defenseman that a lot of people were high on, and he's going to be a good player. And Minnesota got a really good one there, but I don't.
That's who I wanted originally, and then you do a deeper dive. It's like, all right, he's a little smaller. They kind of have a decent amount of smaller defensemen on the roster. And then you look at the agent of Bouillon is the same agent as Cutter Gauthier, so maybe that plays into it.
Right.
Maybe there's some still ill will there with the agency and all that stuff. So maybe they just didn't want to deal with it.
Right.
But the more I think about it, yeah, Hellenius is probably maybe has a higher floor. You could even argue higher ceiling, but the more I look at Luchenko, I think the more I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Because one, you bring up the age factor. You could almost argue that, like you said, they're kind of gearing up for 2025. You could look at this as a top 10 2025 pick. Because, like,
right.
if he is born 3 weeks later and he has that extra year to kind of, grow and develop, and maybe he's a top 6, 7, 8 pick next season. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
I did read a report. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, from what I've seen, he had an absolutely monster combine where like he was top 10 in basically every stat, like everything that you measure in the combine. He just killed the entire combine, which I'm sure kind of shot him up the Flyers ranks a little bit. Dom, what were you gonna say?
So I read a report that there were 2 teams in the teens that were picking after the Flyers that had him potentially as their pick.
Really?
And I think Briere kind of saw the idea that like he's young. He's grown a lot within that past year, and he might grow a lot more. Grow as a player, not literally grow, but like grow as a player within this next year and develop this next year. So where, next year he, like you said, he might be a top 7, 8, 10 pick, whatever it is. So when it first happened, I was like, who the hell is this guy? And then you kind of read a little bit more into it. And, like you said, top 10 in almost all the categories in the combine. Not that means you're a great player, because
it doesn't.
There have been plenty of guys who've had great combines that don't pan out. But it does help. It does help his case a lot. And the stuff that I've read about him, he's like he plays on both ends very well. He's a fast skater. He's physical. You just wish he was like a little bit bigger. That's all. I mean, listen, Mike and I talked about this last week. The teams that always get far are the teams that have that 6'2", 6'3" center, Barkov and McDavid and who else did we say these last few years? Who's been in the cup the last few years? I can't even think. But usually it's those bigger centers.
Sure.
Really the outlier is Crosby, and that's Crosby. A top 5 player, whatever he is, top 5, 10 player of all time. Who's under 6 foot, but like Jonathan Toews was 6'2". So I think that's like the only concern is, did you just pick a guy 13th overall to possibly be a first line center that may never pan out to be a first line center?
Yeah. That was kind of like, that was one of my questions for it, was like upside. I didn't love like a lot of the Brett Flair, the Flyers assistant general manager, who kind of oversees scouts and things like that. He had mentioned in his post-draft interview, I believe it was, or after round 1 or after they picked Luchenko, I can't remember when, but one of the things he had said was, they were assuming that he would get more dynamic the older he gets. And I, not to hyper focus on the language and things like that, but I just thought to myself, I was like, I don't know that players just become more dynamic as they get older, and some guys just have like elite they just have certain skill set, a part of their skill set rather. And it's just like they have that innate like ability that they may work on. But I mean, a lot of it is just kind of like they just have it or you don't. Like you just have some of those elite qualities or you don't. And I even in a best case scenario, I don't know that Luchenko kind of tops out. Probably still as a top, maybe as a second line guy, like which is not a
Right.
bad player at all. And
No.
He's also versatile, like in terms of special teams.
Yeah.
I think he racked up. He was top. I don't remember if he was first in the league, but he was up near the top in power play assists, I believe. He also killed a lot of penalties for them. So I'm sure the Flyers like that aspect of his game as well.
Yeah. I mean, like I totally can. Once I read more about him, like I certainly could see why they liked him. And I'll certainly be rooting for him now that he's a part of the organization. But I just, Hellenis, I think, has a real similar, like, a lot of those qualities are very similar. And I think he's just an all around better hockey player.
It seems like Hellenis is a guy who went up against men.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
a guy that will probably get here quicker than
Right.
Luchenko. So I may, that seems why most people are upset. At least to me, it seems like why a lot of people are more upset about the pick.
Yeah. And then, on the flip side of that with the Bouillon part, like Zeev Bouillon's going to be a good defenseman. I have very little doubt about his game to project at the next level and things like that. He's probably going to be pretty good. And, if we have nothing to connect it to other than what we know, as Mike had mentioned earlier about sharing the same agent as Cutter Gauthier, and like maybe the Flyers just didn't want to go there with that. I still, though, in a sports, in sports business and just business in general, I just don't know that that's good business practice.
Sure.
So because you had a bad experience with an agent before, how many other players does this guy represent? Are you guys just going to completely cut those guys out because you know what I mean? So,
I think the Flyers have. I think I saw somebody on Twitter say the Flyers have one player in their system that has that agent. I don't know who it is.
It's Helge
guy
Grans, I believe.
Okay.
I believe it's
Yeah.
Grans that has the same.
he
agent.
came in the Provorov trade, I think.
Yep. I lost my train of thought.
I have a quick question too. I have a question for
what I
both
was
of
going to
you.
say. What I was going to say is the guy that I really wanted, and it seemed like he was going to fall when 11 and that same Dickinson. I think if Dickinson is there at 12, I think they take Dickinson. I don't think they trade back. I don't think they take Luchenko. I think they take Dickinson.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been surprised by that, and I think a lot of people would have been really happy about that.
Yeah.
People really, really love his potential. And another thing, I think Dickinson is a London Knight, right?
Yep.
And the Flyers already have the connection there with Oliver Bonk and Denver Barkey and two prospects there that are a part of a really good London team. So, that would have been fun to watch the three of them kind of come through the system together.
Yeah.
And, but I mean, there was, I think for the draft, I mean, once Celebrini went and then Lushinov went, it was going to be,
Beckett Sinek with an all-time reaction when he got picked. All-time reaction.
So I have a quick question for you guys. So obviously they didn't take what's his name, Bouillon?
Yeah.
Obviously they didn't take him because he's a little smaller. It's funny you guys brought up Oliver Bonk because that was a part of my question. I don't know much about him. Mike and I have kind of discussed a little bit about him. I looked into him a little bit today. He's a bigger body, 6'2". Where does he project? Obviously, he was a first round pick last year, correct? Or 2 years ago? Last year or 2 years ago?
This last year, right?
23?
Yes.
Yeah, he was last year. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So where does he project to be on this team? Whether when I ask that question, I mean when do you project him to be here, and what do you project him to be?
So Briere answered this question. Was it at the draft? Right around the time.
Okay.
Fairly recently, he answered it, and so he's going to go back to juniors this year, and then he thinks he might even need another year after that in the AHL. So you might not see him for another 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, I think with Bonk,
is he offensive guy, defensive guy? Obviously defenseman, but an offensive defenseman, or is he a two-way guy? Where does he project?
When they drafted, you can answer, Mark. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, when they drafted him, he was more of a two-way guy who didn't really have much offensive. His game really wasn't offensive. He took tremendous strides on the offensive part of his game this year, but I didn't think he'd get to it. Now, whether that might just be maturing in a league that's full of, young adults or kids, you can even call them. I don't know if that's it, but his offensive part, is kind of gone through the roof. And I don't know what that translates to the NHL or how it translates,
Sure.
but
or it even happens again this year.
Right. Well, yeah, or even happens again when he's in London again. But
Yeah.
well, what do you think of his game, Mark?
I think Bonk's probably more of a like stay-at-home guy who can move the puck a little bit. Like I think what happened with London, I think London is, to my knowledge, they have a really, really good team, and there's a lot of talent on that team. And excuse me, I wonder if some of that offensive production came from just playing on a really deep team. And like he was just kind of, he was getting his because there were so many, they were just running teams over. Which I always think like you have to kind of be wary of. Some guys have to alter their games a little bit when they make the pro jump. I think about it, it's not apples to oranges because of the positions and things like that. But I mean, I look at a player like Scott Lawton, who, he had to go up and down between Lehigh Valley and the Flyers a few times before he was able to kind of find a niche and a role that he was able to keep him in the pros, to keep him in the NHL. And I think with a player like Bonk, there may be a little bit of that, like where you're kind of like this dynamic two-way guy at the junior level, but you're probably going to have to settle in a different role at the pro level just because the talent's too great. Right. And you're not going to be able to kind of riverboat and take as many chances as you did.
Yeah, his play style reminds me a little bit, and these are two guys that are like elite level talent, so I don't expect them to reach these heights, but like he reminds me of a play style like Kevin Shattenkirk or like Alex Pietrangelo. Those good puck movers, not incredibly flashy, not a McCarr, not a Fox, but good puck movers that are good on their own end, kind of what he reminds me of.
Yeah.
I mean, can we look at him? Obviously, not a lot between. There's going to be a lot of time between now and when he plays for the Flyers, or whatever team it is. But like, do we look at him and sit here and say like he's gonna eventually be? Are we excited to see him be a number one defenseman one day? Is really what I'm trying to I guess ask.
Yeah, I mean,
obviously there's a lot of developing this year and then the year after, but like,
right?
Does he have that potential?
I don't think so. I mean, unless he were to just make the leap to like the AHL and completely do the same exact stuff he was doing for London. Like, but I think probably like a 3 or 4, like still top 4 guy, serviceable, kind of like a set it and forget it type of player where you can just kind of, what you need on defense. It's nice to have some quiet guys that just kind of, they get their 18 to 19 minutes a night and, they don't hurt you and they're able to get the puck up to the forwards and let them do their thing. Like there's always a role for guys like that. And I think that kind of like, I kind of see him kind of topping out maybe in best case scenarios a 3 or 4.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think
enough.
they're hoping. I think Jamie Drysdale is that one
that
you're talking about. I think that's who they hope they can plug in as their top.
I imagine it being so hard being a number one defenseman and not being bigger.
Sure.
I mean, Adam Fox is a number one defenseman who's under 6 foot, but like, it's so tough. It just seems so rare.
I mean, you look at the number one defensemen that have won the last handful of cups. It's a big body defenseman.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, you guys mentioned Fox and McCarr. Like those guys they're special in completely different ways. Like McCarr's like having like, he could go
he's a top 5 player in the world.
Yeah, like he can go end to end more than like, he can do it as much as McDavid does it probably. Like, you know what I mean? And
he's great defensively too, which I don't think people give him enough credit for.
surprisingly physical too. Like
Yep.
he's not afraid of contact and stuff.
Nope.
Like he'll go in the corners and like muck it up with guys. Like
Flyers could have had him.
they could have, yeah.
Yep.
He'll come back
Was
for
that the,
another
the
show.
Nolan the
maybe.
Nolan
We could
the
go
Nolan
back through.
Patrick
Yeah.
the Nolan Patrick draft, right?
Yep.
Was that the no
Was.
patch? That was right.
Yep.
Because I think it was Mira Heiskanen in that draft as well.
Elias Pettersson.
Elias Pettersson, Nico Hischier. Well, they
Well, you
were
couldn't
going to
take
had him
Hischier,
anyway.
yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2017. Oh, wait, maybe I think it is actually. Yep. Hischier, Patrick.
Hischier went 3, or the Heiskanen?
No,
went
Hischier
3?
went 1. Heiskanen went 3.
I'm sorry. Heiskanen went 3. McCarr went 4.
Correct.
And
Pedersen
then
went
Pettersson
5.
went 5.
Yup.
Pretty
That whole
good.
draft, I mean, we're about to wrap up, so I don't want to get too deep into it. But that whole draft for Dallas, because that was the year they got Ottinger, right? They got was that Robertson, right? They got in that
Yeah.
draft. Heiskanen.
Yeah. Ottinger went 26. Robert Thomas went 20 to St. Louis.
I think
That's
Jason
probably-
Robertson in the second round.
That's a good point though. Like a pretty apt point, like about like just kind of like to put a bow in the whole conversation that we've had here about like the Flyers and stuff. It's like, and you mentioned Dallas's draft, Mike. Like that's a really like you can have like if you hit like really hit on like back-to-back drafts, that can change the whole complexion of your
Sure.
franchise. Like that could turn you into a contender if you're able to hit on some of these guys, not just like in the top, in the first round, the first 20, 25 guys. But like if you can find that gem later, like Dallas found, and Dallas has done it a number of times with guys, but like, if you can hit on back-to-back drafts, like or 2-3 drafts in a row, it can kind of change the whole trajectory of the whole thing. So
Now listen, now that we have Edmonton's first round pick, they signed Jeff Skinner, so they're not making the playoffs. So that'll be a high pick.
Well,
Yeah.
isn't it it's a top 12 pick, isn't it?
That's
Protected?
true. All right, maybe
Protected,
they'll just
yeah.
miss. Maybe they'll just
Protected,
miss. Get the
I'll take it
13th
in the
pick.
top 15. This draft
Yeah,
is really
right.
good. So
Yeah.
I'll take it in the
Nah,
top.
they're not missing the playoffs. It's just funny to dunk on Jeff Skinner.
Yeah.
For being in the league. How long has he been in the league? For 13 years, 12 years, maybe longer. Never played a single playoff game.
I'll have to mention because I'm sure he'll listen to this. My father hates Jeff Skinner, like
Really?
with like a vehement passion. Dad, if you're listening, like
I kind of love that because it's like really random.
It is
Yeah.
random. What's his beef with Jeff Skinner?
I think
Is it
was
because he's a
kind of
figure
like-
skater?
No, probably it's probably got something to do with that. But I think it was like we saw them play back when he was in Carolina, and he had the whole Flyers lineup and the whole bench just like ready to kick his ass like the whole game. And I don't know if it was that, and then after that, and just like never doesn't
That's great.
always reminds me of. He's like anytime his name comes up, he's like I fucking hate that Jeff Skinner, and like
I love that.
So he's happy
he's like
that he
one
got
of his
bought out.
most
Then,
hated
huh?
players in the league.
That's funny. That's good. All right, I think it does it for the Flyers talk. Don, before we get out of here, anything Phillies you wanted to kind of touch on? Guys are hurt, limp to
Dead
the All-Star
bodies
break.
everywhere.
Limp
Dead
to the
bodies
All-Star
everywhere.
break, and then we'll worry about it after that. Anything else
Yeah.
you wanted to,
Nah, I
talk
mean,
about?
Listen, they're still winning games. They have a tough schedule coming up though. They go to Chicago, they go to Atlanta, and come home to the Dodgers.
They're what,
um,
eight? They still 8 games up or 7.5 now? 7? What are they?
Something like that because nobody played tonight. So,
Yeah, right.
um,
It's probably around 7.
but yeah, so you got you got the Cubs, the Braves, the Dodgers, and then I forget who they play. They play somebody between the Dodgers and the All-Star break, and then was it? No, it's not the A's. It's somebody, and then they come back. They go to Pittsburgh. So
Then when
It's
they come
not-
back,
it's
hopefully
not-
you have JT
yeah.
back, maybe
Harper,
Harper,
Schwarber.
Schwarber. Because the lineup's dreadful right now without those guys.
Yeah.
Awful.
but they're still winning. I mean, it's they went 2-2. They split the series with Miami. I mean, where they probably could have gotten swept. They came
Right.
back in 2 of those games. So the 2 games they won. So, or no, I'm sorry. The second game they won was the Sanchez shutout. My bad. But
Yes.
the last game they came back and won. So, yeah, we're limping to the All-Star break.
Limp to the All-Star break, get healthy, make some trades, and that pretty much sums up the Phillies talk. Unless you had something you want to say, Mark. Any final thoughts about the Phillies?
No, I think that pretty much covers it, right? Like, I mean, they've had just like, and it happening all at one time. It kind of felt like I think things were going so well there for the first, couple months of the season, and
The
then
first 75 games.
yeah, yeah,
or
and
like, we, the discourse around like Harper is like, oh, he's finally gonna play in his first All-Star game as a Philly. That's not gonna happen, probably. Right?
I still think that's possible. I know everybody thinks I'm crazy. I think it's possible he comes back for the Dodgers series.
Okay,
I don't think he's hurt as bad as people as we're assuming. But
maybe not.
I
just
think
want to
there's
get him 100%
because
healthy.
because since the injury, I know we're trying to wrap up here, but since the injury, they've had 2 off days, or they've had 1 off day, and they're gonna have another one. I think that helps them a lot. I think they have the off day today. They go to Chicago for 3, then they go. Who did I say? They go to Atlanta. I think he's projected to come back around the end of the Atlanta series. So then they have off next Monday, and then they come home to the Dodgers. I think those 2 off days really help him recover.
yeah, he'll probably definitely try to get out there as soon as he comes off the
He's not
DL.
gonna
I mean,
sit.
he's gonna want to.
Yeah.
He's gonna want to get out there. So, but yeah, I mean, like they've had such a great this start to the year. I mean, like with the injuries and dealing with the injuries like the Phils have, like it's where that pitching comes. That starting pitching rotation's been such a revelation this year, and like everybody's like kind of like even nights where guys don't have it, like they're just finding other ways to get it done. And I mean, like they're a really good team. I mean, I'm glad it's kind of come together like it has for them, and
they're so likable too.
Yeah, they got a real good group, and
is that because we're Phillies fans though? If you're like a Braves fan, you don't think it's likable.
Fuck the Braves. I don't give a shit what they think. I like them.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But all right, we're gonna get out of here. That'll do it this week. Like us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Check out FireSports.com as well. And we will see everybody. Now, thank you for joining us, Mark, by the way.
Yeah,
we'll see everybody next Monday. See you then.